Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Elira and Cale began to grow stronger. At first, their relationship had been filled with hesitation and awkwardness. Elira was used to life in the palace, where everything was predictable and elegant, and Cale had spent his life in a world that demanded constant alertness and quick thinking. But as they spent more time together, they began to understand that their differences could be strengths rather than obstacles. Cale had a way of seeing challenges that Elira had never considered. He taught her how to think ahead, how to anticipate difficulties, and how to react quickly when plans went wrong. One morning, he led her to a small training ground behind the palace, where the floor was covered with soft, glowing moss that could cushion falls. "Today we will practice agility," he said. Elira looked uncertain. "Agility?" she asked. "I'm not strong like a warrior. I'm delicate." Cale smiled gently. "Strength isn't always about muscle. Sometimes it's about speed, balance, and awareness. You have all of that if you learn to use it." Their training began with simple exercises. Cale would place small obstacles on the ground and ask Elira to step, jump, and move around them without touching them. At first, she stumbled, tripped, and sometimes fell. Her hands brushed against the moss and her face flushed with embarrassment. But Cale never scolded her. Instead, he encouraged her, showing her how to adjust her movements and find her center of balance. Slowly, her steps became steadier, her jumps more confident. Elira began to feel a sense of accomplishment that was entirely new to her. She realized that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. Beyond physical training, Cale taught her lessons that were even more valuable. He spoke of patience, resilience, and observation. He would point out how the wind shifted in the palace gardens, how small patterns in behavior could reveal much about intentions, and how thinking carefully before acting could prevent mistakes. Elira was fascinated. In her sheltered life, she had rarely considered such subtle details, but she found that she could notice them and remember them. Her mind, once gentle and quiet, was beginning to grow sharper and more strategic. Elira also began to teach Cale about the kingdom and its people. She showed him the flowing rivers that glowed faintly at night and the floating gardens that hung in the sky like tiny worlds. She explained the importance of respect, honor, and tradition in her culture. Cale listened attentively, amazed by how much care and thought went into every action in the palace. At first, he found some customs confusing, even impractical, but he soon realized that they were part of the kingdom's strength. Understanding them gave him insights he could use in his own ways of thinking. Together, they began to solve small problems. When a small garden creature escaped and caused trouble in the royal kitchens, Elira and Cale worked as a team to capture it safely. Elira guided it with calm gestures, while Cale used quick movements to block its escape. The success was small, but meaningful. Elira began to see that she could take charge in situations that required calm thinking and gentle leadership, while Cale recognized that patience and careful observation were just as important as speed and strength. As the days passed, their training grew more challenging. Cale introduced exercises that tested endurance and mental focus. He created obstacle courses that required quick decision-making, and he set up puzzles that required logic and intuition. Elira faced these challenges with determination. Sometimes she failed, but she learned from each mistake and tried again. She noticed that her body, though delicate, could be surprisingly strong when guided by thought and precision. And her mind, sharpened by Cale's lessons, could find solutions to problems that once seemed impossible. Their growing bond also brought laughter and small joys. They shared stories of their worlds, with Elira describing the shimmering lights of the palace at night and Cale recounting the forests and rivers of Earth. They discovered shared curiosity about the unknown, and this curiosity strengthened their trust in each other. Elira realized that Cale's presence was no longer intimidating. Instead, it was comforting to have someone who understood the challenges of learning and growth. Cale, in turn, felt a sense of purpose he had not known before. He was helping Elira become more confident, and he was learning from her kindness, insight, and resilience. One morning, a test arrived unexpectedly. A small group of palace guards staged a mock challenge, sending Elira and Kale into a simulated emergency situation. Elira had to navigate a maze of glowing corridors while Kale guided her remotely, giving instructions from a control room. At first, she hesitated at every turn, unsure of the right path. But then she remembered Kale's advice to observe, anticipate, and trust her instincts. Slowly, she moved forward, choosing paths based on small signs and patterns. By the end of the test, she had successfully reached the goal. Her heart raced, but her eyes shone with pride. Kale's smile through the screen mirrored her own sense of accomplishment. Through these exercises, Elira's personality began to change in subtle ways. She became more assertive, willing to take initiative when needed, yet she retained her gentle and thoughtful nature. She learned that strength did not mean harshness, and that courage could exist alongside grace. Kyle, too, noticed changes in himself. He became more patient, more thoughtful in his actions, and more respectful of the subtleties of alien life. They were transforming each other in ways neither had anticipated. The palace staff began to notice the changes in Elira. Some whispered about her newfound confidence and precision, while others marveled at her ability to learn quickly from Kyle. The king observed quietly from his chambers, proud of the progress his daughter was making. He knew that these early lessons were the foundation for something greater. Elira's delicate exterior masked a growing strength, and Kale's guidance was helping to reveal it. By the end of this part of their journey, Elira and Kale had established a rhythm. Their days were filled with practice, learning, and shared discoveries. They had moved beyond initial awkwardness and hesitation to a partnership built on trust and respect. Elira was no longer the fragile princess who doubted her own abilities. She was becoming someone who could face challenges with confidence, someone who could combine her gentleness with determination. And Kale, once timid and uncertain, was becoming a steady and reliable guide, capable of teaching and protecting while learning from the princess he had been sent to help. In the quiet evenings, as Elira gazed out at the glowing stars above the palace, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that strength was not about size or force, but about resilience, courage, and the willingness to learn from others. She felt a new sense of purpose growing within her, and she knew that her journey had only just begun. Kale stood beside her, sharing the view, both of them silently acknowledging that together they could face challenges that neither could handle alone. The kingdom, peaceful yet full of unseen dangers, waited for the next steps in their journey. Elira's transformation was underway, and the first sparks of a formidable warrior were beginning to shine through the princess's delicate exterior. Kale, too, had found a new place in the stars, far from his home, but exactly where he was, meant to be. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges awaited them next. Life in the palace had grown both familiar and challenging for Elira and Kale. Elira had gained confidence, learning to balance her delicate nature with emerging strength, and Kale had adapted to a world far different from his own. But peace in the kingdom was fragile, and threats often came without warning. One morning, the palace was filled with unusual tension. Rumors had spread that a rival faction within the kingdom was plotting against the royal family. These rebels were determined to take control, believing that the king's leadership was weakening the realm. The first hints came quietly. Courtiers whispered in shadowed corridors. Guards reported unusual movements, and strange messages arrived, hinting at conspiracies. Elira noticed the anxiety among the staff. Her intuition, sharpened by her training with Kale, told her that the situation could grow dangerous quickly. She shared her concerns with Kale, who immediately began thinking of practical strategies. They walked through the palace corridors together, observing the patterns of guards, the layout of rooms, and possible entry points. Both understood that knowledge and preparation were key to surviving what might come. The king, aware of the brewing threat, called Elira and Kyle to his private chamber. "The time has come," he said, his voice grave, "for you, Elira, to understand what it truly means to protect our kingdom. The lessons you have learned are only the beginning. Soon you will face challenges that will test your courage, your mind, and your heart. Elira felt a mix of fear and determination. She remembered how timid she had felt when she first met Kale, and now she could see how much she had changed. Kyle gave her a reassuring nod, reminding her that she had the skills to face what lay ahead. The first sign of the rebellion came at night. A group of rebels attempted to infiltrate the palace gardens, hoping to reach the royal chambers while the palace slept. Elira and Kale were ready. Elira moved silently through the shadows, her training allowing her to anticipate the movements of the intruders. Kale stayed close, providing guidance and support. Elira's heart raced, but she did not hesitate. She used her knowledge of the palace layout, combined with agility and quick thinking to intercept the rebels before they could reach the inner sanctum. Her actions were precise, coordinated, and fearless. The confrontation in the gardens was small, but revealing. Elira managed to capture the intruders without harming them, demonstrating not only skill but wisdom. Kale watched with admiration as the princess he had trained transformed into a leader who could act decisively under pressure. Word of her courage spread quickly through the palace. The staff and guards began to see that the once delicate princess was no longer just a figurehead. She was someone who could command respect and inspire confidence. Over the next few days, Elira and Kyle worked together to strengthen the palace's defenses. They organized drills, improved security measures, and prepared contingencies for various scenarios. Elira learned to make quick decisions, sometimes acting on instinct, sometimes after careful observation. Her delicate nature remained part of who she was, but it no longer limited her. She combined grace with strategy, understanding that leadership was not about force alone but about making the right choices at the right time. Kale, meanwhile, continued to guide her. He introduced her to new techniques, both physical and mental, that would help her handle unexpected threats. He taught her how to read the subtle cues of human and alien behavior, how to anticipate actions, and how to communicate effectively under stress. Elira absorbed these lessons eagerly. She discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Each success, no matter how small, strengthened her confidence and resolve. One afternoon, Elira faced a particularly difficult challenge. A group of rebels had disguised themselves as palace workers, blending in with the staff. Elira and Kale had to identify them without alerting anyone else. They moved quietly through the halls, observing behavior and noting inconsistencies. Elira's sharp eyes noticed small details. A misplaced object, a hurried glance, a subtle sign of nervousness. She quietly signaled Kale, and together they managed to isolate the infiltrators and prevent a potential disaster. It was a test of patience, intelligence, and courage, and Elira passed with distinction. The experience taught Elira another important lesson. Strength alone was not enough to protect the kingdom. She needed to combine knowledge, observation, and careful planning with the courage and resilience she had been developing. She realized that being a warrior was not just about fighting, but also about thinking, leading, and inspiring others. Kale's guidance had given her practical skills, but it was her own determination that allowed her to apply them effectively. As the rebellion's threat continued to grow, Elira began to take a more active role in palace decisions. She consulted with advisors, helped organize defenses, and even mediated disputes among the staff. Her voice, once soft and hesitant, carried authority. People began to notice that her elegance did not diminish her strength but enhanced it. She moved through the palace with confidence, aware of her surroundings, ready to act when needed and always mindful of the welfare of her people. The king observed her transformation with quiet pride. He knew that Elira was no longer just a princess. She was becoming a protector, a strategist, and a warrior in her own right. The rebellion had given her a chance to apply what she had learned with Kale in a real and challenging situation. Each decision, each action, and each success added to her growing strength. She was learning not only to survive but to lead. Kale noticed the changes as well. He had been a teacher, a guide, and a companion, but he now saw Elira acting independently, making decisions with clarity and courage. He realized that his role had shifted. He was no longer just helping her grow. He was witnessing the emergence of a warrior, someone who could face the dangers of the galaxy with skill and determination. Their partnership had evolved into a true team, each learning from the other, each supporting the other in ways that went beyond instruction or guidance. By the end of this part of the story, Elira had proven herself capable in situations that would have terrified her before. The rebellion had revealed not only the dangers surrounding the kingdom, but also the potential within her. She had moved beyond her delicate beginnings to become a thoughtful and decisive protector. Kale had helped guide her, but it was her courage, intelligence, and determination that had truly made the difference. The kingdom, still under threat, looked to the princess with new respect. Elira had shown that she could handle danger, think strategically, and act with bravery. Her journey from delicacy to strength was becoming evident to all, and the challenges that awaited her next would only serve to further test and reveal the warrior she was becoming. The palace, once a place of elegance and gentle beauty, had now become a training ground for leadership, courage, and resilience, and Elira was at the center of it, ready for whatever lay ahead. The day of the final confrontation arrived with a tense stillness in the air. The rebels had gathered outside the palace walls, and their intent was clear. This was no longer a test or a small skirmish. It was a real threat, one that could change the future of the kingdom. Elira stood at the top of the main tower overlooking the courtyard below. Her heart pounded, but she no longer felt fear in the way she once had. She felt readiness, determination, and a sense of responsibility that anchored her every action. Kyle stood beside her, calm and focused. "Remember," he said quietly, "everything we've practiced, the lessons, the strategies, the awareness, use them. Trust yourself." Elira nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. The delicate princess that the court had once seen was gone. In her place was someone who could think, act, and lead in the face of danger. She adjusted her stance, preparing for what was coming. As the rebels approached, Elira took command. She had studied their patterns, anticipated their moves, and organized. The palace defenders. Archers were positioned along the walls, traps had been carefully placed, and the guards knew exactly where to be and what to do. Elira moved among them with quiet authority, giving instructions and encouragement. Her presence inspired the soldiers, and even the most hesitant of them felt reassured by her confidence. The battle began with the clash of forces in the courtyard. Elira watched closely, analyzing the movements of both her people and the rebels. She spotted weaknesses and gaps, adjusting her strategies in real time. She called out instructions, directing reinforcements to critical points and guiding her soldiers to take advantage of openings. Her decisions were swift and precise, each one reflecting the training she had received from Kale and her own growing instincts. At one point, a group of rebels broke through a side gate and threatened the palace's inner chambers. Elira acted without hesitation. Using agility and skill, she moved through the corridors, intercepting the intruders before they could cause harm. Her movements were fluid and deliberate, combining grace with deadly precision. She was no longer the fragile princess who had trembled at the sight of danger. She was a warrior, capable of defending her home and people with courage and skill. Kyle followed closely, supporting her with tactical guidance and backup where needed. Together they created a seamless team. Elira's natural intuition, combined with Kale's practical experience, allowed them to anticipate the rebels' actions and stay one step ahead. Every move she made showed her growth, from the small lessons learned in the palace gardens to the complex strategies she now executed flawlessly under pressure. The rebels soon realized that Elira was not someone to underestimate. Her intelligence, courage, and quick thinking turned the tide of the battle. Where they had expected hesitation and fragility, they found determination and strength. Each maneuver she executed caused confusion among the enemy ranks, allowing the palace defenders to gain the upper hand. Her presence alone became a source of inspiration, a rallying point for those fighting to protect their home. By the end of the battle, the rebels were defeated, Elira stood amidst the aftermath, exhausted but resolute. The palace was safe, the kingdom secure, and she had proven something important, not only to others, but to herself. She had transformed from a delicate, sheltered princess into a capable and fearsome warrior. Kale, witnessing her courage and skill, felt pride and admiration. Their journey together had prepared her for this moment, but it was Elira's own determination, intelligence, and resilience that had truly carried the day. As the dust settled, Elira realized that being a warrior was about more than physical skill. It was about courage, strategy, leadership, and the willingness to take responsibility. She had learned to combine her gentleness with strength, her intelligence with action, and her curiosity with decisiveness. The kingdom, once unsure of her ability to face danger, now looked to her as a protector, a leader, and a symbol of hope. In the weeks following the rebellion, Elira's reputation grew throughout the kingdom. Stories of her bravery and skill spread quickly, and people began to see her not just as the king's delicate daughter, but as a capable and wise leader. Her transformation had been remarkable, and those who had doubted her now sought her guidance and insight. Elira herself felt a new sense of purpose. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready to embrace the responsibilities that came with her new role. Kyle remained by her side, a loyal companion and trusted advisor. Though he had been the one to teach her the practical lessons of courage, survival, and strategy, he now learned from her as well. Elira's insight, intuition, and understanding of people helped him see situations in ways he had never considered. Together, they had become a team capable of facing challenges that neither could handle alone. Their bond had grown stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Elira took the lessons she had learned and applied them to her everyday life. She organized training for the palace guards, ensuring that the defenders of the kingdom were prepared for any future threats. She helped establish programs to educate citizens, teaching them skills in strategy, problem-solving, and resilience. Elira understood that strength was not only about fighting, but about preparing others to face challenges with confidence and wisdom. Her leadership extended beyond the palace walls. Elira traveled to nearby settlements, listening to the concerns of her people and helping them find solutions to their problems. She demonstrated that a leader could be both strong and compassionate, courageous and understanding. Her presence inspired loyalty and admiration, and she became a symbol of hope for the entire kingdom. Through it all, Elira never forgot her beginnings, the fragile princess who had once doubted herself. She remembered the lessons Kale had taught her, the small victories in the palace gardens and the challenges that had shaped her. These memories grounded her, reminding her that true strength came not from avoiding fear, but from facing it and learning from it. She carried these lessons into every decision she made, ensuring that her actions reflected both wisdom and courage. The king, watching his daughter's growth, felt immense pride. Elira had surpassed all expectations, transforming into a leader, capable of defending the kingdom and guiding her people. Her journey had been remarkable, from delicate beginnings to the emergence of a true warrior. The king knew that the future of the kingdom was secure in her hands, and he felt a deep sense of peace and satisfaction. Elira also recognized the importance of her bond with Kale. Without his guidance, she might not have discovered her potential so fully, but without her determination, intelligence, and courage, the lessons would not have taken root. Their partnership had been a powerful force for growth, shaping both of them in ways that neither had anticipated. They had faced challenges together, learned from one another, and emerged stronger because of it. As time passed, Elira's story became a legend within the kingdom and beyond. Tales of the delicate princess who became a fearsome warrior spread to distant lands and other worlds, inspiring countless others. People admired her not only for her bravery, but for her intelligence, kindness, and ability to lead. She had shown that strength came in many forms, and that courage was not measured by appearances but by actions and heart. In her private moments, Elira would often stand in the palace gardens, looking at the glowing flowers and the stars above. She felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had grown in ways she never imagined. The princess, who had once feared her own fragility, had become a warrior, a leader, and a protector. She had faced danger, overcome challenges, and inspired others to do the same. The kingdom flourished under her guidance. Citizens felt safe, inspired, and hopeful. Elira's legacy was no longer just a story of survival, but of growth, courage, and transformation. She had proven that even the most delicate among us could rise to greatness when guided by wisdom, determination, and the support of those who believed in us. Kale, still by her side, continued to serve as a reminder that strength is not always born alone, but through trust, learning, and collaboration. In the end, Elira had become more than a princess. She had become a symbol, a living example of resilience, courage, and the power of transformation. Her journey showed that with guidance, determination, and heart, anyone could grow beyond what others expected of them and rise to meet the challenges of the world. And as the stars shone brightly above the kingdom, Elira knew that her story was only the beginning of many more adventures to come.